Well, good evening, folks. This is Dave Schmidt. I'm your host here tonight again on the Cosmic Connections program, and this is our March 3rd program as we are now moving into a new month. So we want to welcome everybody. It's 9 p.m. here in my home in Florida, and that means it's 6 p.m. on the West Coast, and for wherever you will be around the world, for those that are listening to the program, I always want to say thank you for everybody for what you do and for joining us. So tonight's program is going to be a little bit different. It'll probably be a fairly short program tonight, but it's just one of those things that it's kind of good to know. Show me the money. Show me the money. Or I always say that about, what is, in all the currency exchanges. But before we do that, let's welcome Blanca here tonight. Blanca, how are you doing on this fine evening tonight?
Doing great over here. Already seeing some signs of spring, so that's always uplifting. And it'll be good to do the review that you're intending to do. I like the fact that you do that, kind of catch people up, add some of your latest observations, so should be good to hear.
Yes. And folks, just to let you know, again, tomorrow I hop on the plane. I go to Denver for the workshop, over the weekend there in Denver. And that workshop is totally sold out. Now, it's not that I don't have a lot of people. It's just that Colorado still puts a limit on how many people we can have in a meeting room. And we have a limit of 50, so that one is totally sold out. 2 weeks after that, we're going to be in Pittsburgh. Now, I still have lots of room in Pittsburgh. And folks, I am going to make this announcement, and this will probably be the last time that I make this. But for those that attend the workshops, you have the opportunity to come into the first round of the currency exchange, in the round one. I allow folks to come in. You have to fill out all your paperwork. You basically are purchasing dong from me. It's a limit of 5 million dong. And I don't know if this might be the first time I'm saying this, but this dong exchange that we're just waiting for it to be paid out, it's going to pay out at $1.50 a dong, folks. That's a pretty good opportunity there. So that's about all I'm going to say on that. And those who will pick it up, they'll get it and they'll understand it. But that's it. I don't have a lot to say. I don't have any big announcements of anything that is going on. Blanca, what would you have to share with us tonight before we go into the program?
Well, the only thing that I'd like to share is, of course, there's people who've been with you, of course, through this adventure and journey called the Currency Exchange. And it's something in terms of timing none of us can control. Now, we can control our own hopes and frequency that this is going to happen for a lot of reasons that you've taken the time to share, especially last week's show was very good to give people a context of what this is about. But what I would like to say, in the years that I've been involved with you, the windows don't open that often. So people, if this is something that you've been wanting to participate in, a window's open. And if it's something that you're very interested learning more about, it'd be good to go to the workshop. You get to ask all your questions. Dave asks he allows a lot of time to answer questions. You've got other people in the workshops to talk with, people who've already been in the first round. And so it would be good, if you can, to at least open yourself up to that opportunity. And as Dave said, it's something that's not going to be indefinite. So just because you go to the workshop doesn't mean you have to participate, but at least you're there to learn about it, ask your questions, talk with other people about it, and then make a decision. So that's all I'd like to share about that.
Well, good. Well, then I think we're just ready to move right on into the program. So, well, folks, last week I gave the background and the history of the currency exchange, how I got involved in it, where it's coming from, and why this is happening for us. It's really, really important to understand this is not the global currency reset that you see talked about on the various blog sites. This is not the one where you get an 800 number and you get to go in and exchange your currencies. Now, based on all my information that comes from my sources, those programs are never getting funded because the people on those websites, they never, ever, ever address where's the money coming from, who's got the money, who's going to put this money in, who's got these trillions of dollars to buy these in currencies at these extremely high prices, and to be able so that you can have it in your bank account. And all my sources keep saying, They're not funding that. The only things that are getting funded in this concept are the private currency exchanges, such as mine, and these have to be authorized by U.S. Treasury. Now, I talked about where this happened in the exchange that I am. It is authorized by Treasury. We've got white hats in the CIA that are backing it up. There's very extensive contracts that are involved in all of this. My understanding, there are 18 different countries that are involved with this issue. But the question always comes back to, where does the money come from? I shared last week, I shared about my trips that I've had to Hong Kong to meet with the Dragon families, who basically were the initial sources of all the money. And they released some of that, about 25 years ago. That gave a start to this whole process. Well, with that, we have to then say, where do they get their money? Where do they get all of this gold? Well, with that, I'm going to share the history of that tonight. I'm sharing it as I understand it. Can I come in here and say that this is 100% absolutely authenticated and accurate? No. I'm going to share it as it's been explained to me and as how I've come to understand it over the years. You have to go back a long time in history, and we're talking 200,000 to 400,000 years. It was about what's being recorded now in the ancient Sumerian tablets. It was about 400,000 years ago that an alien race called the Anunnaki came here to our planet to mine the gold. Gold was extremely important on their home planet, and they were beginning they were losing it. I should say they were beginning to deplete the gold resources that were available on their planet. They use gold predominantly for two sources. One, they grind it up into a very, very fine powder and dust and put it out into their atmosphere, and it protects them as kind of a shield from either the extreme heat of the sun because of how their planet, the orbits that it's on, or even sometimes the extreme cold. It acts as a blanket for their atmosphere and keeps the temperature somewhat moderate for them to be able to handle. Well, that was beginning to be depleted. The second thing they do is they grind it up again into this very, very fine powder, put it into their water, and then they drink it, and it's called ormus. And it becomes it's almost like a drug. It's a very strong, powerful drug that they take in. So the history coming out of the ancient Sumerian tablets is that they were here for about 200,000 years mining the gold. And when they were doing this for the first long extended period of time, somewhere between 30 and 50,000 years, they were using their own people to do all the mining. But then it was called, part of it was in the Neanderthal age and stuff like that. There were these humans, but they weren't vastly developed humans that were here on the planet. The Anunnaki were masters geneticists. And it said that they basically started dealing with restructuring the DNA of these Neanderthals to develop the Homo sapiens, i.e. us, our human bodies. Now this took the stories are this took about a good 6,000 to 10,000 years for them to get this where it was developed to where they actually wanted it. And on a little side note, we see in some of the histories that we will see, the human giant with the side, with the big head and the single eye, or sometimes, you see, the human from the waist up and a horse, from the waist down. And we think that these are just mythological creatures, but what most people are, I should say the good scholars are quietly saying is, those were the trials and the errors in their working with the genetics where they didn't quite get it right and it wasn't the final product, so they didn't continue with it. They didn't allow them to continue to live, but they lived for maybe a generation or two, these creatures, if that's what we want to call them. Well, they ended up developing these humans, these Homo sapiens, and we became their slaves. We were basically slaves for mining the gold, is what we were. And now this ended around 200,000 years ago, and they were pretty much done, and the majority of the Anunnaki were ready to leave the planet. And the ancient Sumerian tablets, what they say is that the Anunnaki received a decree, what was called a divine decree from First Source, or what we would call God, that said they were to create these royal bloodline families that would rule over the humans until the right appointed time. That was about 200,000 years ago. And these royal bloodline families were just that. Their blood was somewhat different than the rest of us as the normal Homo sapiens, and they were the royals. They were the rulers. Some of them were benevolent and some of them were not. Some of them were very dictatorial and powerful in how they, ruled over us. But their job, it says, was to rule over us until the right appointed time. Now also, these royal bloodline families, as they have evolved over the period of time, they in essence are the dragon families today. That's the historical background of the dragon families, is that they had come and they started with the Anunnaki, with the rule that they had. And these families, they were the ones who basically had the gold. Now the gold that they had, that they started with, a lot of it was the leftover gold from the Anunnaki mining days. That's where they got most of their gold. These dragon families, at that point in time, most of them were very, very benevolent. They understood what was their mission and their purpose. They understood that they were there to be, the caretakers. All this gold, they looked at it not as being their own, but it was a gold that belonged to humanity. It was humanity's gold. They were there to be the custodians and the caretakers, to watch over it until it was the right appointed time for it to be released. So here we are. We've now gone through these hundreds of thousands of years, and as a history of the human race, we've come to this point in our evolutionary process where we've gone through massive changes in the last 180 to 200 years. I should say even 140 to 160 years in contrast to the thousands of years prior to that. I mean, look at the advancement and changes in technology and logistics and etc. that we've had in the last 160 years in contrast to prior to that. Massive change. This is the time. This is the time for humanity's evolutionary process to go through a massive change. This is the time that we're waking up. This is the time that we're going through an awareness shift and change. And we're really kind of seeing it with the crazy political stuff that's going on right now. It's just amazing, all of the crazy politics that's going on in our world. It's a part of this awakening process. The bigger picture is the issue for humanity waking up to the truth of what's been going on in their world. Now, so all of this gold that these dragon families have, well, a couple hundred years ago, I should say over these thousands of years, these dragon families developed into where there's 128 different clans. Now that's how it's been explained to me. The vast majority of them are benevolent, but some of them became black hats, not so benevolent. And I remembered on one of my trips to Hong Kong, I was actually told by one of the dragon family members is that the history is, it was about 140 to 150 years ago, the Rothschilds borrowed in that time, in the late 1800s, over $1 billion from the dragon families. And that's where they got their real powerful control of wealth. It came from the dragon families. Yes, they were the ones that developed the banking systems and they were controlling all of that. But the massive power and wealth came from a loan from the dragon families, from the black hats. And what you had was these black hat dragon families that, to me, became somewhat addicted to feeding the Rothschilds to have this power and control over humanity. Well, the benevolent family members knew that there would come a time that these funds would be released, and then the release of these funds is to start setting humanity free from these thousands of years of financial slavery. And that's the time we're in now. This is the right appointed time. This gold was predominantly used as collateral, and they had opened up a bank account. In my understanding, I was told it was that HSBC bank in Hong Kong. And my brokers and the ones who I, basically work with have seen this bank account online, and they said there's so many zeros in it they couldn't even begin to count them all. But it's all, that whole account is backed by the collateral of a lot of the gold that's coming from the dragon families. And that is the money that is also what is paying for everything that's going through the Texas processing office for this whole currency exchange. This is the start of humanity being set free, as I said again, from these thousands of years of financial slavery, because these funds are released to start neutering. They don't kill, they don't get rid of the black hats and the cabal, but they start neutering their financial power. When you look at these families, you always begin to see they look at it through a long-term event and a long-term issue. They're very, very patient. They look at this from a multi-generational perspective, and they have a very good perspective on what their purpose is. Now, yes, they're in Hong Kong and China, but they rise above all the politics of the world, and they just let it be. When they realize that they have been the guardians and caretakers of this gold for thousands and thousands of years, they realized politics come and go, countries come and go, politicians come and go, political philosophies come and go. So they don't involve themselves into the politics of the current time of the different countries and the political leaders. They just let them play out their game, in so many words. But they understand when this gold is used to be released, it's going to help shift and change the world in a position of awareness and an expansion of consciousness for humanity. And that's where this gold comes from. That's where its source is. And this gold isn't just in Hong Kong. Last week I talked about twice I have been on Skype with the Princess of the Philippines. This gold is located all the way throughout Asia. It's spread out so it can't be taken under control in just one place. It's in China, Vietnam, Korea, Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. If you heard Simon Parks, and I've even shared this in my workshops, the Vietnam War wasn't about stopping the spread of communism. No, the reality was the Vietnam War was about the trillions of dollars of gold that was underground in the massive tunneling system in Vietnam. The Korean War was basically the same thing. Now, I don't have this information quite as strong, but my understanding, that was the real issue also with the Iraqi war in taking out Saddam Hussein. My understanding is that Iraq had massive, massive amounts of gold underground within their country. And the last thing they wanted was Saddam Hussein getting all this gold and all this power and being able to have control of that. And that's one of the real, what you call the shadow world reason of why he was taken out. When we look at the currencies that are being traded in this currency exchange, the Vietnamese dong, the Iraqi dinar, and the Zimbabwe dollar. Vietnam, massive amounts of gold there. Iraq, massive amounts of gold there. Zimbabwe, what I had been told, Zimbabwe is the wealthiest country in the world. Now, on the surface, they've got all kinds of mess in the political process of a political country, but underground, they have massive amounts of gold. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this gold. When the Anunnaki came, they had advanced technologies in how they would mine the gold. My understanding was they would get into their spacecrafts, their UFOs, and they would fly and hover over the earth. And they had these machines that were kind of like x-rays that would go down into the earth. And they could see where the large concentrations of gold was. The uniqueness about gold is its energy source, its energy vibration. Gold is the strongest physical vibratory solid substance that we have on our planet. It has a very strong energy vibration to it. And they're kind of like x-ray machines, could pick up the vibration coming from the gold, and that's why they could see it. And the first place they went and they did their mining was where? South Africa, the country that's the most popular for the mining of gold on our planet. And it still has these extensive gold mines today. They would go in and they had these extensive tunneling machines to go right into where the gold was and to be able to get it out, whether it was in solid form or ore form. They had the ability to go in and get it. Now, there are people that are very quietly in the shadow world saying that those Anunnaki gold mines are still there. The government stays quiet about it. The public doesn't get to go into them. There's only selected individuals are allowed to go into these Anunnaki gold mines. And I've been able to listen to one of them who talks about that. So where else did they go? They went to South America, in the areas around Peru and Argentina, northern Argentina. All those northern mountainous, Andes mountainous regions is where they were mining there. They had done mining there. They had done mining in South Africa. And the South Africa part of where a lot of the big gold now, again, is Zimbabwe, which is just north of South Africa, that decades ago used to be a part of South Africa until it became its own country. So the massive amount of gold is still there. Now, I'm going to share something with you that I've only seen from one other source, but it was something that I had picked up and I had a kind of what I call an intuitive understanding of this. When you look back through the history of gold, why has gold always been the most sought after physical substance for thousands and thousands of years? It always has been the most prized possession of what humanity would seek out. Today, it has a monetary value, but for thousands of years, it was because of the energy, the vibration energy that came out of gold. That's why gold was always such a sought-after substance. The ancient pharaohs would have these thrones that they would sit on that were made totally of 100% of gold. Well, when they would sit on the thrones, it was the vibratory energy that would basically open up their mind, open up their brain, and they were able to be very clear. That's why they were always sitting on the throne of gold. And it's ironic that the Pope does that, and so does the Queen. They have these thrones, predominantly all of gold, that they sit on. It's the energy that comes out of the gold is what it does when you're surrounding yourself with that much of it. That's why gold has always been the most sought after substance in the history of the human race. Now, my understanding is on this planet, in this planet is probably a better term to use, there's an unlimited amount of gold. Earth used to be a full multi-dimensional planet. And it's the power of gravity that over the eons of time have basically brought Earth to where it's in its solid substance state that it is now. It would slow down the vibration of a multi-dimensional item. But gold, there are lots and lots and lots of gold underground that still operates in a multi-dimensional state. And then what it does, parts of it solidifies and begins to harden in either to the ore form or the physical metal form over thousands of years. And it's the energy of gravity that has done that. Now, don't ask me how much, where, what, or all that kind of stuff. All I know is that what I have been told is there is more gold in this planet than we can even begin to conceive. It's an unlimited supply. And I think what we're going to see in the future, now how far out, I don't know, we're going to learn how to take the multidimensional gold underground, bring it into a more solid substance, and then again use it, not as a power of money, but as a power of the energy that gold puts out. It has a very unique, significant vibration to it that's different than almost anything else. Its energy signature is very, very different in contrast to all the other physical substance items on this planet. I actually read an article that also talked about when it's in its multidimensional state, it has the ability to expand, which means it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It continues. We think in terms of gold as a physical substance item in a metal, and that's it, and it carries the value of money. But it is so much more than that. But from the conventional world perspective, it is the gold that the dragon families have been caretakers of for thousands of years that is providing the funding for our currency exchange. It's like the money is an extension of that, is what it is. Now, for those of us that are involved in this currency exchange, what I've been told is if we when the money comes our way, if we show ourselves to be resourceful, benevolent, and you making good use of how we spend these funds, the funds won't stop. They will continue to expand over and over again, and there will be an unlimited amount of expansion of the gold, and i.e. the money that will be available for us. It's about taking money and learning to be benevolent with it, learning how to be expansive with it, learning how to use the law of attraction where we expand it through the law of attraction. We've got a lot to learn in that, but that's how I understand it. That's where it comes from. It's what's funding this currency exchange, and the time of its release will be determined by those that are basically in the places of power and control. So that's about all I wanted to share tonight. We've been in the program for just a little over a half hour, and so or coming up to a half hour. Blanca, why don't you go ahead and come on in and share your thoughts with us tonight?
Well, I think you did a very thorough capture about the gold, and just a couple of things to add. That gold is an energy form, and is an energetic substance that has energetic impact on beings. The Native Americans would say that there was something about gold that makes the white man go crazy. And I think it was an energy. I really do. And perhaps at that time, not just the white man, but just, people probably didn't have the consciousness to actually meet the energy of gold. Instead, they met it perhaps with the energy of greed or whatever, and that's what made them go crazy. And the other thing is that the controllers of the world take great pains to take gold away from us, hide it, degrade it, poo-poo it, and say that their paper money is real and gold isn't. So whatever the controllers say, always believe the opposite. So those are the only things I have to say.
All righty. Well, let's open up to any callers tonight. If there are people who would like to call in, if you have questions or you'd like to make comments, that number is 515-605-9356. Again, 515-605-9356. We don't have anybody there designating they want to call in, so if you hurry, get on the phone. There we go. We had one come up, and we'll go ahead and take this from area code 203. So there we go. It's starting to come up. Oh, a little slow. There you go. Area code 203. You on the air? What would
I
you
can
like?
hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
This is Peter from Connecticut. Okay. Yeah, I was curious. My friends that are involved in investments and also involved with the dong. Now, you're saying that when the dong revalues, now, where we buy...
Excuse me, you got an echo in the background. You need to turn your volume down.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, turn the volume down? Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Um, I don't know if that helps. Does
Yes,
that
that
help
does.
at all?
That's better now. Yes.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay. Where I have a friend that I negotiate with different investments we're both trying to pursue. But with the dong, when you buy the dong at one of the banks that might sell you the dong at low rate. Now, when it does RV, why couldn't we go back to those banks where the rate has internationally
Well, I've
increased?
told you my
So
opinion. There is no such thing as an RV on a public perspective at a bank. I can't find anybody that's putting up the trillions of dollars to do with that what people talk about. These are private
well, how about when the
exchanges.
but if it goes at the rate of a dong goes up internationally on the internet, you're saying it won't go up on the international rates or screens, or what do they call it?
Not by what we're getting paid. The dong currency is only being used as a vehicle to move money to us. It has nothing to do with the bank rate internationally of the dong. Absolutely nothing.
Wow. That's
The-
interesting.
The currencies that are on the open foreign exchange market are just going to continue as they are. Yes, there might be small changes as they always have, but you aren't going to see, be able to buy dong at a bank and then think it's going to RV and you're going to get, 1,000 times more than what you paid for it. That is never going to happen. That's a public revalue that I can't find who's going to come up with the scores of trillions of dollars to pay for that.
Yeah.
You see? Ask the common sense questions. Where's the money coming from that? The Dragon families have told me explicitly there is no such thing as an 800 number system. There is no such thing as an RV because we aren't paying for any of that. There are private currency exchanges as I am involved in, and that is how the process is starting. And the currency, the dong, is only used as a vehicle to move money. All that it is.
Yeah, because they're all raving on these different currency calls right now. I can list a few of them right now.
I'm
that
aware
it's
of
going to
them.
RV
I
by
know.
March 15th.
They've been saying that
yeah.
stuff that it's going to happen next week. They've been saying that for over 4 to 5 years, and it never stops. They just keep saying it over and over and over and over again every day, every week for 5 years, and it's never happened that way. And I'm going to come back, and I'm going to say they never, ever, ever can tell you where the money is coming from. They never discuss that. They never talk about it.
Okay, that's what's been puzzling me for a long. Why I couldn't figure out where I was being misled to believe it was internationally, because that's what they talk about when you hear these calls. That all the bank rates are going to go up, and you can just go to a bank. Okay, so now that really clears it up for me. Good.
See, those are common sense questions that they never bring up and they never address. That's why I always say, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. Who's got the money to pay for what they talk about?
Yeah, but okay, here's a question for you.
Okay.
How come nobody? There's got to be some smart people attending these calls, and I don't hear anybody trying to explain or talk about how what they say is going to happen when you just explained it totally different than what could possibly happen. Why don't they understand? They're being all misled. And anytime I go on these calls and I try to challenge them, they just disregard everything I say.
I know. Now, I'm not going to explain who, what, or why. I don't know. All I know is that when I first started doing this, they would post my newsletters and my comments and my show on their site. And when I started asking the question, who's got the money? Where's the money going to come from? It only took about a couple of months and they banned me from their site, and they never ever let anybody talk about me on those websites. What does that tell you? I'm the one who knows where the money is coming from. I know who has the money. I know where the processing office is. I know how the structure is working. I have copies of the contracts. I know the 18 countries that are involved, and they never ever talk about any of that stuff. See, so
You know what?
somebody along the way is giving them very false information, and they're buying into it and believing it.
But you know, these guys are cashing in. I could list a few different calls that we go to. They're cashing in different ways, getting people to send in funds to help support the calls,
Yeah,
or they're selling stuff.
I know.
It's maybe somebody
Yeah.
else is paying them to say this stuff. They're cashing in on all this. It's criminal, I think.
Listen, nobody, they can do that. They can sell stuff, do whatever they want, ask people for donations. People, that's called a free will. There's nothing that they're doing that is illegal. You know, if people want to donate to them to run their programs, they can do that. If they want to sell stuff on their programs, they can do that. Nobody forces anybody to do anything. People take that
It's
money
based on lies.
as a free will.
It sounds like it's based on lies, and I have a real
Yeah, but
problem
they
with
don't.
that.
They believe they're telling the truth. They're telling. They
I
talk
don't
about
know.
it.
I don't know.
Listen, they.
I
talk,
think they could be crooked. I don't know if I trust these people.
well, you know, there's people believe what they want to. That's all I'm going to say. People believe what they want to, and
They
you
do.
can come with them and challenge them with certain questions. When I say who's got the money, where's the money coming from, who's got the scores of trillions of dollars to pay for what you talk about, they can't answer that question, and they never address it. So.
Okay, when these programs that they have that you're involved, the brokers that have programs that people have are waiting to exchange the currencies. When they are about to happen, does that mean somehow they could impact the U.S. dollar to crash? Somebody asked me that question. I was just wondering what your perspective is on when or if the dollar is at risk to crash when we finally do see some currency exchange.
It's possible, but I can't say that authentically. I don't have what I call a good authentic answer to that question. It's very possible that it might. It is designed to restructure our global financial system, and it is designed to put clean money into the global financial system to replace what you call a lot of this black hat cabal-based funding systems that we've had for thousands of years. But it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a period of a number of years.
Well, those are all my questions
Okay.
for the moment. I don't
All right.
know what else to ask you.
Good.
So thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Okay.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, if anybody else again would like to call in or comment, again, the number is 515-605-9356. That was the only caller that we have. If nobody comes up and shows us here in the next about 30 seconds or so, we might call it an evening. But I'll go ahead and, Blanca, turn it over to you. Why don't you share with us your comments?
Well, it's always nice when people call in because it's kind of like a litmus test. I've been listening to you give information about this matter, and you consistently differentiate that what you're involved with is a currency exchange. It's not about RV or GCR or 1-800 numbers, or it's a very different matter. And so the discussion with this caller, I think, was one more chance for you to make that distinction.
Yes.
And I think it's an important one because they're very different matters energetically as well. This gentleman who called was concerned about some of what he was hearing, so you could tell that the energetics are a little different regarding that other process.
You know, I'm not here to castigate the people that show up on Dinar recaps and all those. They truly, fully believe in what they're saying, and they truly believe that their sources are good sources. And I just thought, I don't know how they can be. That's just all I'm going to say. I'm not going to castigate them. I have run in the past of what I call dark black hat sources that were deliberately putting out misinformation to a person that I was in touch with 2 or 3 times a week, and he was giving me all that information, and it took me about a year to figure out this guy's being used. He's being used. He believes his sources that they're authentic, but he is being used because the things that he keeps saying never, ever, ever, ever comes to pass. It never happens. So I always look for 2 things. Show me the money and show me somebody that can deliver on what they talk about, and it's not just stories. It's not just empty stories. And what we've had on the blog sites for 5 to 6 years have just been empty stories. Okay, we got another person that's coming in from area code 763. So area code 763, you're on the air. What can we help you with?
Hey, Dave. Got a question in regards to your program that you've got going with the drawing. Now, you had stated in the past that you were selecting people off of your most current lists of places that you're doing your shows. Went to one in Minnesota here, it was a couple years back. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if, I guess, first of all, qualifications. And secondly, you had also mentioned that we needed to purchase the dong directly from you versus most of the other setups are sending currency in.
Yes.
Could you clarify that?
Yes.
I missed the very first part of the call because it didn't come as an announcement.
Okay.
But.
Well, here's what happened. I was
Yep.
told by my brokers to put a limit
Yeah.
on how much dong people could turn in. Now, let me just say that limit, I'm not going to say how much it is, but it's still very, very, very high. Okay. I had one guy,
Yep.
though, that turned in 464 million dong to me. The excess dong is what I'm doing is I'm bringing in new people, and the money that they're paying is refunding the people for their excess that they have to be refunded for, and plus there's some administrative cost in there. The new people that are coming in, I'm putting a limit on how much they can purchase because I want to bring in more people. I want to expand this and have a couple hundred more people come in. Okay.
Okay.
And we are at the point now that I don't have any more room to bring anybody else in other than those that are going to be attending at the workshop in Denver and in Pittsburgh because all the slots will be filled. They will all be filled. Now, if you would have contacted me 2 or 3 weeks ago, I probably could have filled you in on one of those slots, but it's too late now.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah, I was actually going to try and get in contact with you 2 or 3 weeks ago when you first started talking about it. But you had mentioned even then that you were going off of that list. So, and I don't know. I guess I didn't know how to get in contact with you besides through the calls, and I didn't really want to do this over the air. But it is what it is. So, all right.
Okay.
Well, if anything changes with that, keep the number.
Well,
it's the best I can do at this point. So.
It's just the fact that I can't announce this publicly to my whole list because remember, I have over 15,000 names on my list.
I understand that.
And I got, now not all of those are active, but a good, 5,000 to 7,000 people, listen to the newsletter each week, and I only had room for a few hundred people. Yep. So how do I decide?
Right.
See? So that's what I did.
How do you choose?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay.
10-4.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Have a good one.
Yep. Bye. Okay. We got another person on area code 714. So area code 714, you're on the air. What can we help you with?
Hi, Dave. How you doing? This is Aaron from California. I really appreciate all the info you're giving us. And according to not the last caller, but the caller before that, you answered a lot of questions that he had. I was kind of surprised that he delved into it so deeply. But I'm on the same track with these military intel contacts, and they're confirming that the shotgun release is supposed to be in the next 10 days before the Ides of March, which is March 15th. And they're really pushing this now. And, if what you said, that this is all just maybe propaganda, that these people really believe what they're being told.
You want to know for how many years the military intel contacts have been saying, that the money's being released in a week or two? They've been saying that for over 3 years, and it's always been the military intel contacts that tell them that. They have never delivered in 5 years of their stories. And they aren't going to deliver
It's
this
pretty
time
amazing.
either. They aren't going to deliver this time either. So they're always saying it's their military intel contacts. Well, then you've got some military people or some people who are faking to be military that are feeding them that information. And they just keep saying it and saying it and saying it. And they never, ever, ever take responsibility for being wrong week after week after week for years. Anybody who's been watching them can see that.
You know, these people, they really believe it, because that's the
Yeah, they
sense
do.
I get.
I know.
And that transfers to the rest of us, going, wow, if they believe it, it must be true. But you're saying it's probably not.
They live in a fantasy
you're right.
land of the stories with no facts.
Yeah, well, you're right. This has been going on year after year after year, and it's like always tomorrow.
And it's been going on
So-
for years. I think they're living in a fantasy. They're living in a fantasy, and they aren't looking at the hard facts. And it's either they're so desperate or they're in such a deep fantasy that they think it's going to happen, and they don't want to take responsibility for how they're misleading thousands and thousands of people with what they say.
Right.
So,
Right.
Okay?
And there is one group that they have a call in that you can get their intel, and you know, like I said, they firmly believe, and it's the will of God, and you know, this is going to be a blessing for all of us when it happens, and you know, they go on and on like this, and it's very convincing, and it's hard not to get swooped up into this.
Well, and you're right, because see, I got started that way. I got started believing all of that until all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, where's the common sense in this? And I started doing my homework. And I did my homework. As I said, I've been to Hong Kong 4 times. I know my sources. I know where the money is coming from. I know my brokers. I know the people at the processing office. I know the contracts that they have. So I've come back to the information that I give. It's tangible. If I can't give tangible information, I don't talk about it.
Right.
Okay?
Well, I guess we're just gonna hang tight here for a while
Yep.
until you come through with your sources, and we'll just still be here.
Okay. Alrighty.
So, thank you, Dave.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, I don't see any other callers at this time, but we do have room if anybody else would like to call in. Again, the number is 515-605-9356. You will come up right away. Blanca, is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we see any more callers come up?
No, it's just interesting. I don't spend time on those other sites, but from the callers, it sounds like things are really getting drummed up right now. Really, you know, the pitch seems to be pretty high right now.
Well, but they've been doing that. It's not, to me, I browse it. I always read it and browse it just so I can be informed of what they're talking about, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
What they're
absolutely.
saying
Yeah,
isn't
because
any
you're
new or any
involved in it.
different than what they've been saying on and off for the last 4 to 5 years. Their military intel sales sources are saying it's going to happen in 2 weeks. They were saying that 3 years ago every week. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I hope people aren't heartbroken, but anyway, I guess it is what it is.
it is what it is. Well, I don't see anybody else calling in, so I think we're ready to call it an evening. How about you?
Sounds right.
Okay.